When I was 7 years old, my 10-year-old brother, Jamie, was kidnapped, or so they say. The police claimed whoever had taken him were professional in doing so, that I'd been incredibly lucky to have not been taken as well. They described the kidnapper in this way because no fingerprints were ever found on any of the furniture. My brother had never made a sound at the time, and most importantly, there was no sign of a break-in at all. None of the windows had been broken, the doors weren't busted, nothing. Several days before his disappearance, my father found a painting while rummaging around in the attic. He'd been trying to find his old bass guitar after I'd asked him if he played any instruments. Turns out, he used to play in a band with some of his friends, and he was a pretty decent player. His group was called CO.AG. Unfortunately, after an hour of searching, the guitar was never found, but the painting was. It had been placed against a wall and surrounded by boxes. My father had noticed the golden frame glinting as he walked around. The painting itself was magnificent. When he lowered it down, it seemed to be in good condition, despite being in the attic for so long. There was a house in the picture, a large gray house surrounded by grass. In the background, a cliff could be seen, then a sudden drop, which evened out into an ocean. It stretched on into the distance. Some birds could be seen up above, circling the house. On the back were scrawled some words in red ink that read, Gadiel e ben e hun. My mother recognized it as Welsh. We didn't know what it meant at the time. My brother and I weren't very ecstatic about having it as a new house decoration, but my father loved its simplicity. He decided to put it up in our bedroom. That night, we had dinner as usual. Spaghetti, I believe. Then my brother and I went upstairs for bed. We both shared the same room. We were slightly afraid of the dark, so our door was left ajar most days, letting some of the light seep in. After getting changed into our pajamas and joking around for a bit, we both settled down to sleep. It was around 2 a.m. when I awoke. I realized I was hot and sweaty, so I pulled myself into a sitting position. Jamie was in his own bed to my left, sleeping soundly. My throat was parched, so I figured I'd get a drink of water. I pulled myself out of the bed sheets and left the room as quietly as possible, creaking the door open. Slowly, I crept down the hall, conscious that the floorboards creaked. The last thing I wanted to do was wake everyone up. I headed into the bathroom. When I returned, I was refreshed, and I pulled myself back into bed. I had pretty much stood my head under the tap and lapped up water like a cat, cupping it in my hands and splashing my face as well. As I pulled myself back into bed, I noticed something odd about the painting on the wall. There seemed to be a black smudge to the right of the house, something I hadn't noticed earlier. Curiously, I pulled myself back to my feet and approached the painting, as I couldn't quite make it out properly in the dark. On closer inspection, I gathered that the smudge was some sort of man. It resembled a human, but was completely black. It looked like it was standing stationary, looking outwards. Its head was cocked ever so slightly to one side. I considered waking Jamie to show him the mysterious figure, but decided he'd be cranky if I did so. I'd wait until morning. I retreated to my bed. When morning arrived, the figure was gone, to my dismay. I told Jamie about the figure, but he didn't seem to believe me. For the rest of the day, I watched the painting suspiciously, believing that it may appear again at any moment. It didn't. As my brother and I were climbing back into bed that night, I'd forgotten about the figure. That is, until the same thing happened again. Just as before, I awoke in the early hours of the morning, soaked in sweat. This time, I anticipated the figure's arrival and glanced at the painting straight away. I felt a twinge of fear. The smudge was there again, but it had moved, and it had doubled in size. It had adopted a new position, right in front of the house, a few meters away from the front door. Instead of going over for a closer inspection, I forced myself to go back to sleep, hoping with every fiber of my being that I was dreaming. That night, I fell asleep, shaking in fear. The next day was uneventful. I avoided the painting for the most part, spending time in the living room downstairs watching TV. I mentioned about the dark figure to my parents that day, and of course, they didn't believe me. "You were just dreaming, Harry, that's all," they told me. This was the last day I ever spent with my brother. That night, I had awoken at a similar time again, around 2 a.m. I can't remember exactly what time. With dread and fear churning in my stomach, I reluctantly glanced at the painting. It was completely black. I remember physically shaking in terror, believing that if I made the slightest noise, I would trigger something. Slowly, I pulled myself out from under the bed sheets. I crept over to the bedroom door and then ran over to the bathroom, the floorboards creaking as I went. I locked myself inside. I figured I'd stay here until the morning, then ask my father to put the painting back in the attic the next day. There was obviously something wrong with it. I just didn't know what. What happened next will stay with me for as long as I live. After several minutes of waiting in the bathroom, I heard the floorboards creak in the hall outside. At first I thought my brother had woken up. Disturbed by my footsteps running down the hall, the creaking was approaching the bathroom and stopped just outside the door. "Jamie?" I whispered. No response. I knew someone was standing right on the other side of the door. I just couldn't figure out what they were trying to do. Did they need to use the bathroom? "Mom?" I said. To this, I heard a scratching sound on the other side of the door, as if someone was dragging their fingers across it. I backed away, terrified. After a moment, whoever it was walked away, their footsteps creaking their way towards my room. The next day, I awoke in the bathtub to the sound of banging. It was my father. He was thumping the outside of the door with his fist. "Harry? Jamie? You in there?" he snapped. I answered it slowly, stiff from lying in such an uncomfortable position. Apparently, this morning, when my parents had awoken, they'd found our room empty. My mom went downstairs to find us, and my dad looked around upstairs. "Is your brother in there with you?" he'd asked when I opened the door. I shook my head, but he didn't believe me, and he pushed past, searching the room. It was only after another half hour of searching that my parents began to panic. The police were called around. Everyone was convinced someone had broken into the house and taken him in the night. The police believed I had locked myself in the bathroom to hide from the kidnapper out of fear. They questioned me relentlessly about whether I had seen his face. I couldn't answer. There was something else. On the outside of the bathroom door, there were 3 deep gouges, diagonal, from top left to bottom right. The police believed they were caused by a knife, repeatedly dragged across the surface. They claimed that the kidnapper had been trying to get me as well, but had thankfully given in. Our house was closed off for several days, and we were provided with a hotel while the police searched for fingerprints or any signs of breaking and entering. As I said at the start, they found nothing. When we finally returned to our home, my parents were a teary mess. They moped around, slowly, answering my questions with one-word answers. I knew anything I said about the painting at this point was useless. No one ever seems to listen to children in times of need. They continued to act like this for half a year. It was a horrible time. Returning to my bedroom after everything that had happened was horrible. I remember crying when I saw my brother's empty bed, his toys that were still scattered across the floor, toys he may never be able to play with again. Before I turned to leave the room, I glanced at the painting one final time and noticed something peculiar. There was no dark figure, but there was something strange in one of the house windows. Curiously, I approached and looked closer. It was a face, a little boy, and from what I could tell, he was the spitting image of my brother. His face was contorted into one of terror, and he had tears streaming down his face. His hands were both pressed up against the glass. Several months later, the police gave up on the search. His funeral was held on April the 12th. To this date, the saddest day of my life. After that, all we could do was get on with our lives. I showed my parents the painting, but they shouted at me and stashed it back in the attic. They thought the boy had been in the painting all along, that I was simply imagining the resemblance. I'm 38 years old now and have a place of my own. When I eventually left my old home, I made sure to take the painting with me, for I am the only one who truly knows what happened to my brother. The dark shape I saw all those years ago was some kind of entity, something evil that intended to trap us both in the painting for an eternity. It succeeded with my brother, but I had locked myself in the bathroom, so had been saved. I keep the painting in the attic now, in case one day I might be able to free him. I can't lose hope, like my parents did. After researching, I found out that the words on the back of the painting, Gadiel e ben e hun, had been a warning. It translates to English as leave alone. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I'll hear a thumping sound coming from up there, footsteps roaming around in the attic. I'll always shout my brother's name in hope he may have finally been let out. I never get a response. It's storming tonight. The wind is howling wildly. Thunder and lightning rages every second. And I'm all alone inside our 2-story house. There are 2 entrances to our house, a front door and a back door, of course. We also have an attic and a basement. Our house is pretty big. It has a lot of room. But fate hates us. Dad passed away a long time ago, and our first house was taken by fire. She hasn't returned yet. I hope she's okay, 'cause this storm's a killer. I feel weird tonight. I'm so worried about Mom. I hope this storm ends soon. I'm lying on the couch in the entertainment room upstairs, watching television. I pick up the phone and try calling Mom a couple of times. She won't answer. What's taking her so long? Of course, it's the storm. I turn off the TV and go down to the living room. I try to call her one more time. Her phone rings and rings and rings. No answer. It's starting to get cold. Good thing we have a remote-controlled electric fireplace. I click the button. Instant heat. I sit on the armchair and wait. The storm's getting angrier. The rain hits harder. Thunder rumbles and screams violently. Maybe I should make myself something, just to pass the time. I go to the kitchen and open the refrigerator. What's good? Should I take the remaining slice of strawberry cake or a piece of lasagna from last night's party? The lights suddenly go out. The fridge's light ceases. The electric fireplace dies. Everything goes out. There's nothing left but dark. Pitch black darkness. Darkness eats away at my house. The only light left is the occasional strike of lightning, and every time it strikes, I feel as if it hits me. It feels as if it struck me. The hair on the back of my neck rises. It gives me goosebumps. I'm frightened. I was never afraid of the dark, or lightning and thunder, or being alone, despite all of those. It happened to me once. I was a kid then. I just waited, like what I'm doing today. And you know what happened? Mom came. She came for me when I was a 9-year-old little girl. Now she'll do that again. I know she'll return. I run up the stairs, tripping a couple times. I'm never careful. Using the light of the lightning flashes outside, I make my way to my room and open the closet to take the emergency flashlight I hid there. It's getting colder. I go down to the living room again, now armed with a flashlight. She's still not here. Why? I look at the clock. Dang, it's 11 p.m. already. Should I call her again? Now I'm really worried about her. Now I'm afraid. I'm scared for her. A sudden feeling comes to me. I want to go out there and look for her. But maybe she's near. She must be walking outside. I should see her. I rush to the front door, open it, and see a dark sky looming above me. I look around. No Mom. All I see is a vast space filled with wet grass and some trees. The road is on the left. Icy wind chills my body, and the cold seeps through my bones. A loud crash explodes from the clouds. It's so strong. It momentarily lit up the place, making it seem like day for a split second. I saw something during the flash, or someone, standing between the trees. Who is it? Is it Mom? I look harder, foolishly using my flashlight as if its weak light would help me see through the vast dark. Another bright flash of light, and the whole house comes to life. The power's back. It seemed like Christmas with all the lights on my house on. I look between the trees again, and I see it. It's not Mom. It's somebody else. And he's running towards me fast. He runs like hell. He runs like he just got out of prison. My heart begins to thump as my mind goes blank. He's getting closer. What should I do? I see a gleam in his hand, and I realize what he's holding. It was a big, deadly knife. I scream as I regain control of my body. I slam the door shut as he was inches away from the porch and quickly lock it. I don't know what to do next. He kicks the door hard. The sound reminds me of thunder. I screamed again. What should I do? He kicks again, and I scream louder. Nothing's gonna happen if I just stand here waiting to be impaled. I run down to the basement. I look around frantically for something, anything. I don't even know what I'm looking for. I hear it again. He wants to get in. He's hungry for a kill. What if I tell him I'm going to call the police? Would that scare him? Maybe it's too late. I begin panicking. I should stick to my plan. I see the perfect weapon, a crowbar. I pick it up. Should I go back to the living room and wait for him to break the door? No, that's suicide. I'll just hide here. Besides, it's not easy to break down that door. Suddenly, he stops trying to break it. Why did he stop? Has he given up? Maybe. Wait. No! The back door! I dash back upstairs, hoping it's not too late. I hold my weapon tightly. Whatever comes, I'm ready. At least, that's what I tell myself. I run past the living room and into the kitchen. The rain keeps getting more horrible as the wind dominates my hearing. And I stop in my tracks. There he is, standing at the threshold, like I feared. He's come through the back door. He's wet, probably freezing. His tall structure makes his shadow cover the entire room. In his hand, the knife gleams. Thunder and lightning crashes, killing the power again. His long black hair obscures most of his face, but I can see the malice of his stare. He's wearing a black shirt, and I don't recognize the color of his pants through the darkness.
Hello,
He says. A smile crawls across his pale face. I scream in my mind. Get back! I shout with all my strength. I said go away! He sprints towards me, fast and deadly. I swing my crowbar, but it stops mid-swing. He caught it. Now he's going to stab me. I let go of the crowbar and run as fast as I could away from him. He catches me and clutches my hair and pins me down. I scream in pain as he pounces on me. I'm done. I'm dead. But I can't give up. Not for my mom. I kick hard, and I was so lucky to hit his crotch. He moans and curses me. I take the opportunity to dash up the stairs and straight to my room. It was quite funny, because I didn't even trip once. I close the door and lock it. What should I do now? I fall to the floor helpless. I shiver like I never have before. Lightning strikes again. I scream. I've never screamed because of lightning before. The rain's getting weaker now. I also begin to compose myself, to get myself back together. I take a deep breath and look around. I still need to protect myself. Damn. I forgot to stock up on deadly weapons in my room. Then I hear him calling me. I can hear his footsteps coming up the stairs.
come out, little baby.
He says in his creepy voice.
I'm not gonna hurt you.
I try to keep myself together. Don't scream. Be as organized as possible. I find my phone. I don't think it'll help me now. But what have I got to lose? I dial 911. It rings. My life depends on it. I hear an answer, but my phone suddenly dies. Oh, great. He's outside my room. Ugly psycho.
Come out, honey. I know you're in there.
I almost flinch.
Little girl, please let me in.
Says the big, bad maniac. Fuck you! I reply angrily. I hear his angry rampage as he tries to kick down the door. My door isn't as strong as the front door. He kicks again. I keep my mouth shut,
but my brain is screaming out in terror. The lightning strikes once more. I can hear him kick again. Then I hear a different sound, something I'm familiar with, something that I could have been very glad to hear, but this time it makes my blood run cold. Something that I've been waiting for the whole time, but now I regret it. It's my mom. Susan! Susan, where are you? And I'm pretty sure he heard her too. No! I shout. Not my mom! Not my mom! I hear him run down the stairs. Courageously, I open the door and follow him, but he's already out of sight. I'm so frightened and so angry. Going down the stairs feels like forever. It seems endless. I reach the bottom and I see it. He sits on top of her. He's stabbing ferociously. Stab, 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 stab. My mother just lies there, motionless. Her blood pools on the floor. She's trying to scream, but the blood that gurgles from her mouth prevents her from doing so. Her eyes dart toward me. They're filled with terror, shock, and they're saying something. Run. I can't stand it. I'm so bewildered. I forget how to feel. He turns his back to me.
Your turn.
I snap back to my senses just in time to see the maniac coming towards me. I run to the kitchen and turn to see how far behind me he is. He's near. He's so determined. He's unstoppable. And he's gonna get me. I run faster. I try to exit through the back door when I feel something cold cut my back. He slashed me. I grab the first thing within my reach and smash it against him. It was a frying pan. It has no effect on him. He grabs me by the neck and throws me to the floor.
Don't worry. I won't kill you yet. We're gonna play first.
Oh, no. No, please. He kneels on top of me and rips my clothes off like a wild animal. I'm dead. I'm doomed. He bites my shoulder, then my ear. He takes out his member.
I'm going to rip you apart.
He shouts with zeal. He opens me up like a kid opening a Christmas present. It's hopeless. He's getting inside of me. I'm giving in. I accept my fate. But no. No. My mom wouldn't have wanted this to happen. I look around frantically. There's the knife rack. There's nothing left for me to lose. It's this or die helplessly. I look him straight in the eyes. They were green. Green, furious eyes. I bite his nose. He shouts. I bite harder until it bleeds. I manage to slip away from his grasp, taking advantage of his shock. I stand up and run for the knives. He grabs my ankle. He stabs my leg and I fall. I'm too angry to feel anything. I jump for the knives and they fall to the floor. I grab one at random and stick it in his eye. He rolls over and lays on his back, but never lets go of my leg. I grab another knife and cut off his penis. He screams louder, like a little girl. I know he doesn't have enough strength to fight back. I sit on top of him. I stab. Stab, 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 stab. His blood paints my half-naked body. I stop. He's dead now. I think of my mom. She was my last family. I remember what he did to her. I look at his face. Where his left eye used to be, there was now only an empty socket. I feel weird. It's the creepiest feeling ever. It was fun, enjoyment, pleasure. The lightning strikes again. I take his big knife and grip it tightly. I need more. It felt so good. I stab his dead body again. Then another one. Stab, stab, stab.